The book talks in its subtitle about the two characters who are the lawyers. What about Hamdan himself? How much time did you get to, or did you get to spend any time with him?
I actually didn't, because journalists are not allowed to speak with people who are on Guantanamo. Hamdan has actually since been released, but
you went to his hometown.
I went to, yeah. I spent several weeks in Yemen with his family, and in fact, with I didn't know at the time I was going to be able to meet him, but I was while I was there, I learned that that his brother-in-law, who had actually introduced him to bin Laden, who had recruited him initially to join this jihad, and had then introduced him to bin Laden, and this guy was actually a very senior officer for bin Laden. He happened to be in Yemen when I was there and had just been released from jail in Yemen, so I was able to spend a lot of time with him too, and so that I really relied on his family and on this guy, his brother-in-law, and really his best friend to help kind of fill out my portrait of Hamdan himself.
In the epilogue that you've added to the paperback edition of the challenge, you write about what's happened since the book first came out. Want to sum it up for us?
Sure. Yeah. Essentially, this trial that their lawsuit was designed to prevent him from being tried in these kangaroo courts, these unfair military tribunals. Well, their lawsuit forced some changes in the system. But the Bush administration decided to go ahead with the trials, albeit a somewhat amended form of the trials. Hamdan was brought to trial, and here this man who was really the poster boy of the war on terror. He was to be the first Arab tried in this system. Bin Laden's driver, this dangerous terrorist, is brought to trial. The government wants to send him to prison for life, of course. And he's given essentially 5 months. So really a jury of military officers decided that he was in fact a nobody and that he wasn't worth holding any longer, and he was released, and now he's back in Yemen.
You smile as you tell the story because it's so ironic on one level, but real lives have been devastated by the way that this country responded to 9/11. Yeah. As you think about this one case, how do you explain how little movement there have been on so many others? Yeah,
well, it's hard to say. I mean, I think that really what has happened is that a couple things. One thing I'll say is that I think that the Bush administration developed these policies over the course of 7 years, and filed sort of brief after brief and made argument after argument and created policy after policy, and Obama inherits all of those things. So if his administration wants to reverse these policies, they're not starting from scratch. I mean, they've inherited this mess on Guantanamo Bay, and there are some people there that we need to figure out some way to keep them in prison. So part of it is that I think that this is like a huge steamship that is going to take a long time to turn around, even for someone as nimble as President Obama. That's one thing. Another thing I would say is that all of these policies that the Bush administration implemented, were in service of empowering the executive. They were, as we know now, we all know now, it was all about the executive really becoming as powerful as he could be, and essentially being able to do whatever he wants to do in order to keep the country safe. Frankly, that's if you're coming into no matter what your sort of ideological persuasion is, if you're coming into office after that, as President Obama has, you are going to be a little reluctant to give away all that power. I mean, even though I'm sure he, and we all know he disagrees with the Bush administration on so many issues, he still, to be as effective as he can be as president, is going to want to retain as much power as possible. We've seen presidential power, abused by Democrats and Republicans alike over the years, and so I think that's part of it too. That he's going to give this power back, kind of warily and slowly.
Although you would think that would make Congress move very quickly.
That's true.
Before we have to close, you're now reporting on a whole different beat on the economy of this country, and you were recently in Detroit talking about the way that the economy has affected people there. Michigan is one of the states that is now vying to perhaps take some of these detainees. Are these two stories connecting?
Well, I guess, I think it's a sort of a measure of how bad things are in the state of Michigan that they're actually willing to consider and perhaps even enthusiastic about the idea of having a big prison facility with a courtroom, et cetera, that will employ people. But frankly, it's I did just spend a lot of time in Detroit this winter, and it's very grim. I mean, there are no. It's hard to imagine any other with the state of the auto industry that there's. It's hard to imagine any kind of long-term solution kind of taking root there. So yeah, so in a sense, those two stories are kind of converging. Yeah.
Ouch. Jonathan Mahler, thanks so much for coming in. Jonathan writes
pleasure.
for the New York Times Magazine. The paperback edition of his book, The Challenge, is just out with a new epilogue. We'll have information at our website. That's GRITtv.org. Thanks so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you.